Welcome, everybody, to this week's podcast episode for the Financial Freedom for Physicians podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Christopher Liu. And as you know, I've always touted four types of freedom: financial, time, location, emotional freedom. And in that light, I always bring in guests. They start out as physicians, but now I'm talking with real estate entrepreneurs, investors, business owners to talk about current state of things, new trends, what to watch out for, what to look for. And so today we have author, and she's also a real estate investor, Chris McCarron. You can see her book in the background, Empower Your Inner Millionaire. So check that out. I'm sure it's on Amazon. But today we're going to talk about all real estate and, the current trends and what are her thoughts. So, Chris, welcome.
Thank you very much for having me here. I'm very excited to talk with you.
Yeah, I know we got connected through a mutual acquaintance, and I know you're usually a podcast host, but I know real estate is really a very interesting asset class for especially high net worth individuals, high income individuals. So tell us more about yourself, how you get started, and we'll get the conversation going.
Okay, great. Yeah, I've always been interested in real estate, but had varying levels of success with my own investing. And I think that was primarily because I didn't, as a young person, understand this whole thing about market trends, right? And now, as an older person, I've got it. And I'm very excited that we're going into a place where there are going to, I think, in my opinion, again, be opportunities to be a savvy investor.
Yeah. And so, we'll talk about, the opportunities. So you primarily, you do, looks like you're a realtor, but you also do, you do active direct real estate investing, or are you more on the passive syndication side?
Yeah, no, I do my own stuff. I haven't been able to yet, cure myself of the habit of, painting and taking walls down and being kind of involved in the 9 to 5, get your hands dirty aspect of it. Although I'm definitely stepping away more and more and directing people to do the stuff. But I enjoy that. I enjoy that whole creative process of taking a place that isn't living up to its potential and sort of, shining it up a bit.
I love that. Yeah, some people think, being the term landlord is kind of using a negative connotation, but if you're like very hands-on, you like to do things and be very active, it's a great place, and you get to develop some great relationships. So well, tell us more about, okay, so the big question, we'll just hit the elephant in the room, is is the housing market in a bubble?
I don't believe so. And that's just, based on what I'm seeing. I think people feel like maybe it is, but there are actually a lot of unmet need, a lot of unmet housing needs. I mean, it seems like, right, I'm seeing places jump up all over me. And I'm thinking, where are all these people coming from that are going to fill these spots? But they're all being filled, and there's still a need for that. And part of that is because we had some times when people just were afraid to move or just didn't feel comfortable moving or whatever. But, and then as always happens, in a cycle, is that now, because prices are up, like both labor prices are up and material costs are up. So a lot of developers are just saying, we're not going to move forward. We're just going to put our projects on hold. And I feel like that's going to even tighten up the supply more. So I do feel there are still some definite opportunities for people. It doesn't feel to me like a bubble.
Okay. And so the question, so one of the question is, I was watching the numbers recently, and they always say that housing is a asset class that always lags. First is you look at the bond market, then you look at equities, which usually is the fastest moving, and then real estate, hard assets. I was reading this one article by a mortgage broker, and he was saying that the Fed is playing with the short-term interest rates to control the inflation numbers, prevent recession, that balance that tightrope, and whereas the long-term rates is actually very favorable during these times. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, when you see, I mean, of course, it all depends. What's happening next, right? Are we actually moving into a period of inflation? Are we going to have a recession? But in general, looking at the numbers now, if you were to, let's say that you decided to buy a piece of real estate and use debt to do that. So in general, if you're taking out sort of a traditional mortgage, you're going to be paying that money back with dollars that are worth less than they are today. So it's, even though like, oh, it's 6% instead of 3 or 2, you're still actually in a good place to use leverage. Again, with my high flying knowledge, right? That's what I'm hearing and that's what I'm seeing. Even though it's a little scary, because even though we're not in a bubble, I do think we're at the top, right? So we're at the cusp of a very healthy cycle. And I do think that prices are going to head down a little bit, but I guess what flashed into my mind is my 10-year plan, which is my sort of like financial independence plan for folks who are interested in real estate investing, where basically you buy a property every year for 10 years using a 10-year note. And then you're always, when that mortgage is paid off, you take out another 10-year loan on that property, and that's your income for that year, completely tax-free income. So like, that's what I think of, like, this is just such a great time to get in there and then to just keep on doing that, keep on buying a property a year and just setting yourself up for this constant passive income stream that's just going to, like, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, it's quite interesting because because 2008, that was just basically over leverage and just just excess in the
Yeah.
system, and it got flushed out. This is now is talking about more of a market cycle.
Yeah.
And so but I do agree with you to some extent that there is we're at the top and then we're in for a correction. I don't know how much, but like I said, it's if you're a first time home buyer or you're trying to get in, now would be the time to start looking and start planning, so that when opportunities come, you can take advantage of them.
Yeah. But home ownership is different, from investing, right? Because your home is not, even though it feels like an asset, if you're going to just go buy another one, it's not really an asset. Like, oh, my car is an asset because it's paid off. But guess what? If I sell that car, it's not like, oh, now I can go to Mexico, right? That's not really an asset. So if it's making you money, it's an asset, right? Robert Kiyosaki. But your house, your first home, or I feel like, who cares? Because there again, if you sell it at the bottom of the market, you're going to be buying at the bottom of the market. And if you sell it at the top, you're going to buy at the top. So if you're a first time buyer, just buy your house and start getting the benefits, and don't worry about where we are in the market.
And then the question is, so given the current market, would you consider real estate as a good investment, or index funds, or equities?
I always prefer real estate because even like, okay, so I buy an index fund and it goes down, or I buy an index fund and everything goes down. Real estate goes down, everything goes down. But at least with real estate, I'm still getting rent. Someone's still paying me to have that real estate. And then, I've got so many more tax advantages. Plus I probably leveraged it. If I put my money into an index fund, I probably had to put 100% of the value of what I have in there, compared to real estate where I could have put 20% of the value of the real estate. So, and then, all this time my tenants are paying my loan. So there are I have this whole, I actually do like a little webinar, which is called Real Estate Investing. Is it for you? And it talks about, these are all the great things about real estate, like why I love it. And one of the reasons is like, 100%, you call up the fund manager and you say, I just don't like the way you're handling this fund. I want you to make these changes. They're going to be like, what do you, I'm like 1/1000% of my fund. Who are you? I don't even know who you are. But if it's your real estate, you've got that control. You're going to be able to say, hey, today it's residential, but I could turn that bottom floor into, commercial. And then I could have some diversity. And I mean, it's just so many things. I just love real estate. Can you tell?
Yeah, I can tell you have because yeah, I mean, it's evident that there's some people that just really love real estate, and just like people love equities, and
Yeah. Yeah.
some people, they don't own either, they have their own business. So
Yeah.
for the question is, for especially high income earners that just came out of training or they're just coming into their first paycheck, what are some best approaches for those interested in passive income through real estate?
That's an excellent question, because I know when you're first getting out of school and you've got, I mean, I work with a lot of physicians to help them find homes, and they're looking at $250,000 in student loans, and they're like, oh yeah, sure, I'm going to become a real estate investor, right? Give me a break. But actually, if your first house could be what's now called a house hack, where you're paying for the house, but you've got some tenants, or you've got, maybe you've got a multiple unit property, some other way that somebody in that house is helping you to pay. If you're single, maybe you have a roommate, but there's some way that that house is turned into an asset by paying you money every month. That to me is really, it's a fantastic way to get started in real estate. And it's a great way to just ease the burden of, that potential student loan debt or whatever debt you might have run into, even just having a mortgage.
Mhm. So you're advocating that or physicians, or we're just talking in general, even though they have student loans to qualify for their first house, or and then use that as quote a residential plus investment through house hacking.
Yeah,
Is that
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, physicians, and a lot of banks offer physicians 0 down payment loans. And you can just, if it's your residence, you've got that huge advantage to put down from like 0 to 5%. And then you're in for a very low price, and you're living for free every month. And it's just, people say I can't afford to buy. If you're a physician, I don't think you can afford to rent. I mean, really, that's
Yeah.
my bias again.
And I know it sounds like you're in the Boston area, right?
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on high cost of living areas, given, work from home, given, post pandemic, are, are we, are you anticipating people moving out of those, or what are you seeing?
It's interesting because right when the pandemic started, there was a huge shift out of the cities, right? People are like, my partner, myself, my kids, we're all working in this 500 square foot place. We're going to kill each other. We have to get out. So suddenly everybody's buying places in the mountains and the seashore and, every place around here that's within a short distance. And the condos were going for sale, or they were just, either getting rented or being basically not abandoned, but, people weren't home for a long period of time. And then we also saw, the grandparents are moving in so that they can care for the kids, so that the parents can work. And it just became a very big like lifestyle change for people in a very short period of time. And that is now starting to, reverse itself. So the properties downtown that were kind of stagnant as far as price goes, they're not increasing at all, but they're also starting to now turn over. And as far as like, should you live, was that part of your question? Should you live in in an expensive area?
Yeah.
Because we see that like you can live in Brookline, and then you can live one door down right next door in Brighton and pay like, a third less for your condo. Why? Because Brookline has a great school system. Well, if you don't have kids yet, you need to pay for that school system. You know what I mean? And probably in a lot of cases, you can get a gorgeous little house in Brighton and send your kids to private school and still save money, But also schools, areas with good school systems hold their value really well. So you really have to look at, when I start working with clients, we sit down and we talk about what are your goals? How long do you think you're going to live here? If you left, would you rent it? Would you want to sell it? Like you really need to feel where they're going to be and where the market might be when they need to make a change. Right. So it's like put your crystal ball vision on, and try to anticipate the future as best you can to help people make the right decision.
Yeah. Yeah. And as a realtor, you're trying to really match the buyer with their future home or investment. One question I had for you was, I know, for example, a lot of areas such as Vancouver, a lot of wealthy international investors are buying these places, but not living in them. They're just holding it just to diversify their assets, and it's driving the prices up. people can't, it's driving the rents up. People can't, working people in the city can't access housing, and it's happening across a lot of different locations. A lot of locales tried to do what's called a investor tax, but regardless, these wealthy investors, they still pay that tax, so it's nothing to them. So are you seeing the same thing in Boston, or are people buying these places, either for investment or for residence, or what are you seeing?
In the average place, people are buying places to rent. I mean, there are probably like, I'm sure there are condos like in the Intercontinental where someone just parking their money and they never go there or whatever. But I think for the most part, the majority of Boston real estate, I think, is just from my experience that people, once they do buy it, because I work with a lot of investors who are outside the country, but their interest is always in, getting some type of return on that property rather than just, because it is so easy to rent, in Boston, because we've got the colleges and the universities and all the different medical centers and things like that. And so it's so easy, and you are getting really high quality tenants. So that's my own experience, but I really don't know. There could be a whole factoid of the population that's just sitting vacant, but I don't think that's a huge problem here.
Yeah. What are you also seeing in terms of commercial real estate, especially the post-pandemic and work from home?
Yeah, it's interesting. It's very interesting. I actually just purchased a space where I'm sitting right now, which is I'm turning into a co-working space, because there's a weird, there are big commercial buildings that are just sitting, and then there are people who can't find office space. So it's funny. I feel like there's like a downsizing, if you will. So, what company now is going to lease 20,000 square feet? I was talking to someone the other day, and I can't remember where they work, but they had leased like an 18,000 square foot office, which they now are going to reduce to about 6,000 square feet. And you're like, zoinks, that what's going to happen to the other 12,000 square feet? But it's that size office, right? It's a satellite. So a lot of my people, let's say that I own a large corporation. A lot of people work remotely, but I've got 4 or 5 individuals who work in this one area. So I want to lease them a tiny office space that they can so they can collaborate a couple days a week or whatever. And I don't have to sign a lease, and I don't have to insure it and get printers and internet and all that kind of stuff. I'm leasing a spot in an existing office building. And I think, obviously I made that investment, so I feel like it's a wave of the future. Both people who are working from home who don't want to be, just staring at the 4 walls every day, and people who are, small entrepreneurs. They just started their own business during the pandemic and they're doing okay. And now they're adding a person, and they want a little office space. So
yeah,
that's what I think is happening, is we're just, scaling everything down. But.
Yeah. It's going to be really interesting because, especially with WeWork, the IPO didn't go through, but that was supposed to kind of revolutionize co-working. And then, but it's really interesting the way you describe it, because it's kind of a way it's also almost like you're subdividing time and space,
Yeah.
In the past it was, apartments or multifamilies, that's how you could scale, but now it's kind of you lease a space and then you rent out spots, it's almost like house hacking, a little bit, but it's quite interesting.
Yeah, that's kind of how I'm thinking about it too, because I'm a house hacker from way back. So now I'm like, now I'm office hacking.
Wow. Well, it was great to connect, and I really enjoyed your thoughts, and I know the audience is really, you gave a lot of good, interesting ideas and pointers. How can people contact you, follow you, and maybe even, work with you?
Thanks, Chris. It's been great talking with you. I love your questions. You're a really good interviewer, because we had that conversation before we started that, I'm on the other side of the chair. What am I going to say? But yeah, I actually am creating a house hacking course. It's not quite ready yet, but womencreatingwealth.net is one place where there's some stuff where I kind of hang out, and all of my social stuff is basically Boston RE Guru, GURU. So Boston Real Estate Guru, very egotistical title that I gave myself. But yeah, I'm all over social media with that. And then of course the podcast Women Creating Wealth, which I hope people could find some good value with from that. We try to share lots of pearls on that podcast. So.
Yeah. And for all the listeners out there, I know a lot of the audience is female physicians and entrepreneurs. All of Chris's links and resources will be in the show notes. And be sure to check out her book, Empower Your Inner Millionaire. It's on Amazon. Check it out. I'm gonna check it out right after this. And thanks so much for coming on to the show. And we look forward to hearing about your future success.
Thank you very much. Me too. Take care, Chris.